make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
Coming up on Arirang News, President Yoon welcomes home the remains of 7 Korean soldiers who fought in the Korean War, returning after more than 7 decades. South Korean auto giant Hyundai Motor records an all-time high operating profit in the second quarter on robust sales of high-end models, while SK hynix sees losses for the third quarter in a row with a slump in memory chips. But both are expected to perform well in the second half. Tech giant Samsung holds its Unpacked event on home soil for the first time ever. It's unveiling the 5th generation of its Galaxy Z Flip and Fold devices. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. President Yoon welcomed the remains of Korean War veterans as they were returned to South Korea Wednesday evening, more than 7 decades after the 1950 to 1953 war broke out. Hosting a military reception at Seoul Air Base, Yoon greeted the arrival of the remains, which were handed over to South Korea in a separate ceremony in Hawaii. The fallen veterans were paid the nation's highest honor as soon as their remains entered Korean airspace, escorted by 4 F-35 fighter jets before receiving a 21-gun salute. One set of remains was identified as First Class Private Chaim Nak, who passed away at the age of 19 in the first year of the war. His younger brother, sister-in-law, and nephew attended the ceremony. The total 7 sets of remains repatriated Wednesday were identified while under U.S. custody as members of the South Korean Army. President Yoon renewed his pledge made last year to help bring national heroes back to their bereaved families. It appears highly likely that North Korea will hold a large-scale military parade marking the 70th anniversary of the Korean War Armistice Agreement, which it refers to as Victory Day. Citing multiple unnamed government sources in South Korea, it has been reported that the parade could start as early as Thursday at midnight and last for several hours. This as intelligence officials from South Korea and the United States over the past few days have spotted late-night rehearsals at Kim Il-sung Square in Pyongyang, where the North usually stages its military parades. Analysts forecast the event to showcase the regime's nuclear weaponry, like intercontinental ballistic missiles and small nuclear warheads. The International Monetary Fund has once again slashed its economic outlook for South Korea for this year to 1.4% amid prolonged uncertainties both at home and abroad. Our Lee Kyung-won explains.
The International Monetary Fund cut its 2023 economic growth outlook for South Korea on Tuesday to 1.4%, down 0.1 percentage point from its previous estimate of 1.5% in April. The Washington-based organization cited uncertainties facing South Korea from both home and abroad, including global monetary tightening measures and weak export figures. The latest forecast is on par with the South Korean government and the Bank of Korea's outlook of 1.4%. However, the Asian Development Bank last week lowered the country's growth outlook to 1.3%, down 0.2 percentage point from its previous estimates. Despite the downward revision of South Korea's economic growth forecast for this year, the IMF kept its estimates for 2024 at 2.4%. In the meantime, the IMF revised up its 2023 global economic growth outlook to 3%, a 0.2 percentage point from its previous estimate. The upward revision comes on the back of the recovery in the service sector, its U.S. debt ceiling woes, and abated concerns over a crisis in the banking sector. However, the IMF warns that the global economy is facing lingering challenges despite near-term resilience, adding that countries around the world should remain their monetary tightening policies. Yoon, Arirang News.
Consumers in South Korea are expecting inflation to ease for the foreseeable future, given the lowest inflation forecast in 14 months. The Bank of Korea's survey of roughly 2,500 households released on Wednesday said the country's expected inflation for the year ahead dropped to 3.3% in July. That's a 0.2 percentage point decrease from the previous month. The decrease was mainly due to the Consumer Price Index growth rate falling to 2.7% on year in June. But the BOK says the rise in public utility bills and crop prices caused by the heavy downpour could affect their inflation forecast. Meanwhile, the Composite Consumer Sentiment Index, which reflects people's expectations of the economy overall, improved in July to 103.2, up by 2.5 points on month, suggesting consumers are more positive about the economy. There was a stark contrast in South Korea's two leading firms' performances. Hyundai Motor posted its best performance in the second quarter thanks to a strong sales of its high-end models. SK hynix, on the other hand, suffered losses as global chip demand remains in the doldrums. Our Lee Soo-jin reports.
South Korea's auto giant Hyundai Motor and chip maker SK hynix saw contrasting business performances in the second quarter of this year. But both hint that they expect to see more robust global demand in the second half. Hyundai Motor once again saw record quarterly operating profit. In its preliminary regulatory filing released on Wednesday, the company's operating profit surged 42.2% to $3.3 billion during the April to June period compared to the same period the previous year. This is the third consecutive quarter of record quarterly operating profits. Sales came to $33.1 billion, up around 17% on year. The company attributed the growth to robust sales of SUVs, Genesis luxury models, and EVs. The company said it expects continued growth with the increase in production from the stabilization in the global supply of chips and components.
There's more supply than demand for chips, lowering prices, which bodes well for auto companies.
Chip maker SK hynix, on the other hand, posted an operating loss of more than $2.2 billion during the second quarter this year, a stark contrast to the operating profit of more than $3 billion in the same period last year. According to its regulatory filing, its revenue also plunged nearly 50% on year to nearly $6 billion. This marks the first time in a decade that the company recorded operating losses for 3 consecutive quarters. However, there is optimism about its performance in the second half as the generative AI market continues to grow. The second quarter already saw a lower operating loss compared to the first quarter, thanks to the surge in demand for essential components for AI servers, such as high bandwidth memory and double data rate premium products. One expert says this is good news for the nation's exports.
This will have a positive impact on exports. Exports will go up, and the question really is about how much it will go up in the second half.
This is also largely in line with the Finance Ministry's forecast in its Economic Green Book released earlier this month that the slowdown in the economy will ease as exports recover in the latter half. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics holds its Unpacked event in its home country, South Korea, for the first time. The company looks to maintain its lead in the expanding global foldable smartphone market with the 5th generation of its Galaxy Z Flip and Fold devices that comes with larger screens and slimmer hinges. It's time for Samsung to woo buyers around the world, but this time starting in Seoul. From major buildings in Gangnam to Namsan Tower, tourist attractions in Seoul were lit up with teasers of Samsung Electronics' latest foldable smartphones. This as Unpacked 2023 is taking place in the tech giant's home country for the first time ever. Samsung's mobile chief No Tae-moon said hosting Unpacked in Seoul is of great significance as the city not only has emerged as the center of innovation and culture, but also foldable smart devices. The event, which started at 8 p.m. Korea and streamed live worldwide on its website and YouTube channel, unveiled the fifth generation of its foldable devices, the Galaxy Z Flip 5 and Fold 5. Compared to the previous generations, users of the latest foldable devices will be able to enjoy larger screens and slimmer hinges. Also a major improvement from its predecessor, a teardrop-style hinge minimizes the display crease. On top of that, they come with a bigger battery and overall lighter device. During the Unpacked event, new smartwatches and tablets are being released as well. Also, BTS member Suga appeared in a video that Samsung uploaded on Twitter, expressing high hopes for the new devices. South Korea's foreign exchange transactions marked an all-time high in the second quarter of the year as foreign investment here increased. According to the Bank of Korea on Wednesday, the average daily foreign exchange transactions hit $69.37 billion. This is up 3.8% from the previous quarter and also the highest figure since 2008. The central bank attributed the rise to increased interbank transactions amid rising foreign investment and a stable foreign exchange market with reduced currency fluctuations compared to last year. Population concerns grow at home as the number of births continues to fall to hit a fresh low. The figure for the month of May dipped below the 20,000 mark for the first time. Our Moon Hae-ryun has more.
South Korea's population crisis continues as birth rates continue to fall. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the number of births plummeted to just under 19,000 in May this year. This is the first time the figure has fallen below 20,000 for the month of May since data was first compiled in 1981. And with just under 29,000 deaths in the same month, the population saw a natural decline of nearly 10,000, the highest so far this year. It's the 43rd consecutive month that the country has seen a natural population decline, while the number of births has fallen on year for more than 7 years straight. For May, the number of births fell by over 5% compared to the same month last year. By city, only 3 cities, including Daegu and Ulsan, saw increases in the number of births, whereas 14 other cities, including Seoul and Busan, recorded decreases. The number of registered marriages saw an increase with over 17,000 recorded, up 1% compared to last year. The number of marriages had been on an upward trend in South Korea since August last year as a result of eased COVID-19 regulations enabling people to host larger gatherings. However, the trend ground to a halt in April, falling by more than 8% on year. A spokesperson from Statistics Korea said further observation will be needed to see whether the dip in marriage figures for April was an anomaly, or whether the effect of eased regulations had finally worn off. The number of divorces in May also rose, increasing 0.3% on year. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
The Korean government and the ruling People Power Party today came up with new measures to better protect the rights of teachers in the wake of a recent death of a school teacher. One of those is revising the progressive-led Student Human Rights Ordinance. Our political correspondent Lee Si-hoo reports.
The ruling People Power Party and the government vowed in a meeting on Wednesday to push for a revision to current laws and seek the introduction of new laws to better protect the rights of teachers. Among those present at the meeting were Deputy Prime Minister and Education Minister Lee Ju-ho, Presidential Education Secretary Oh Seok-hwan, and PPP floor leader Yoon Jae-ho.
There needs to be social efforts to take full measures to recover and protect teachers' rights before it's too late.
In August, the government and PPP will hammer out a framework clearly defining the scope and methods of teachers' role in monitoring and controlling students' behavior. In addition, there will be manuals to guide teachers in their interactions with students' parents or guardians, both in person, via phone, or online. Also underway is a revision to the Ordinance of Student Rights first adopted by Gyeonggi-do Province back in 2010, which many have criticized for overprotecting pupils while undermining teachers. These moves follow the shocking suicide of a teacher last week in the school in Seoul where she taught.
Because of the incident, the social consensus that we should recover the rights of teachers is stronger than ever.
After the meeting, Representative Lee told reporters that the PPP has proposed, quote, a plan of compromise to the main opposition Democratic Party that requires documenting students' violent behavior toward teachers and placing it on their permanent records. If the DP agrees with this, the revision of the law can take place as soon as possible. The DP, meanwhile, held a press briefing and criticized PPP members on Seoul City's council for stymieing efforts to protect teachers from parents and their, quote, abuse of power.
The introduction of the Ordinance of Teacher Rights by Education Superintendent Cho Hee-yeon last year went nowhere because of the blind opposition of the PPP representatives on Seoul Metropolitan Council.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly Education Committee will hold a meeting on Friday to discuss the matter and review related legislation. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
The nation's former second vice foreign minister Lee Do-hun has been appointed as South Korea's new ambassador to Russia. The top office made the announcement on Wednesday. The post had been vacant since April, with the former ambassador Chang Ho-jin being appointed as the first vice foreign minister. Lee is a career diplomat who served as a top nuclear envoy for South Korea during Moon Jae-in administration, with experience in multilateral diplomacy. Local reports say that with the war in Ukraine putting strain on Seoul-Moscow ties, Lee could start working in Moscow as early as the end of this month. China's outspoken foreign minister Qin Gang, who disappeared from the public eye for a month, has been replaced by his predecessor Wang Yi, who is known for being a friendly policymaker in general towards South Korea. Our Lee Dae-yeon reports on how this may affect relations between Seoul and Beijing.
China's Wang Yi has got his old job back. Beijing's top legislature reappointed on Tuesday former Foreign Minister Wang to be the position he had held for 10 years until 2022. Despite the appointment, Wang will still head the Communist Party of China's Central Foreign Affairs Commission General Office as its top diplomat. Wang is an experienced diplomat who has a deep understanding of the diplomatic relationship with Seoul. Experts say this could be the turning point for South Korea and China to improve the bilateral relationship, which had been drifting for a while.
By reappointing Wang as foreign minister, China appears to have moved its diplomatic policy toward easing Seoul-Beijing relations rather than to pressuring Korea, as Wang has actively communicated with South Korea before.
The 69-year-old visited South Korea at least 5 times from its first inauguration as foreign minister in 2014 and actively communicated with his Korean counterparts on issues regarding the Korean Peninsula, Northeast Asia, and other international matters. From 2019 to 2021, Wang had visited South Korea for 3 consecutive years, showing how Seoul and Beijing sought to overcome the thought crisis and normalize relations. Wang was reportedly scheduled to visit South Korea last year, but with Qin Gang's faster-than-expected appointment as a foreign minister, this had not been settled. Wang had recently met South Korea's Foreign Affairs Minister Park Jin in Indonesia, where he expressed his hope for the two countries' strategic ties to be restored. Now, strengthened diplomatic ties between South Korea and China are expected amid the recent Washington and Beijing decision to stabilize their relationship and the need for Seoul and Beijing to cooperate considering the economic slowdown. One expert says, however, that the Seoul and Beijing relationship is closely connected to U.S.-China ties, meaning that Beijing fighting back against Washington's trade rules by controlling exports of chip raw materials may affect South Korea. Meanwhile, Qin Gang's removal as foreign minister came after less than 7 months in the post. China's state media reported the decision was made during an emergency session of the National People's Congress convened on Tuesday with no reason being given. Lee Dae-yeon, Arirang News.
Following Russia's withdrawal from the Black Sea grain deal, the EU seeks to export Ukrainian farm produce via countries bordering that country, which the Union calls solidarity lanes. The IMF says repercussions to global food prices could be significant as well. Shin Se-byuk reports.
The European Union is seeking to export Ukrainian grains via what are called solidarity lanes. This is according to the EU Agriculture Commissioner on Tuesday, following Russia's recent withdrawal from the Black Sea grain deal.
The trade using the solidarity lanes by Poland, by Hungary, for example, by Romania. Romania is the biggest transport corridor.
Solidarity lanes are rail and road transport connections through EU member states. To realize the plan, cooperation is needed from 5 countries bordering Ukraine, including Poland, Hungary, and Romania. Russia recently pulled back from a UN-backed initiative that allows Ukraine to safely ship its farm produce through ports on the Black Sea. This could severely harm global food security as Ukraine, known as the breadbasket of Europe, is amongst the top 3 exporters of grain in the world. In fact, the International Monetary Fund on Tuesday warned that Russia's recent pull from the deal may result in higher global grain prices.
We would be thinking that somewhere in the range of 10-15% increase in prices of grains is a reasonable estimate.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, in an interview with France 24 on Tuesday, said Ukraine would keep trying to revive the deal. However, he also added if it is not possible, it will seek an alternative sea route to ensure grain exports to Europe. When it comes to new export alternatives, he said Kyiv could use American F-16 fighter jets to protect grain shipping lanes in the Black Sea. Kuleva said Kyiv with F-16s could launch a new, safe, and efficient corridor to export some 100 million tons of Ukrainian grain to the global market. Ukraine is due to receive the jets before the end of this year. 신세벽, Arirang News.
Accidents that happen at sea can be particularly difficult, especially when a fire breaks out on board a ship. South Korea's Coast Guards have been expanding the use of drones for such missions in adverse conditions, with hydrogen drones the latest addition to their training exercises. Our Yoon has the latest.
When a fire breaks out on a cruise ship, it is reported to the maritime police and drones are dispatched. The drones are quickly able to spray fire-extinguishing chemical powder and also locate people in the water that need rescue. And for extreme situations at sea, hydrogen drones seem to be key.
The challenge has been limitations due to the weather at sea, but airborne drones can shorten the time to find any drowning people.
Search and rescue teams conduct mock training exercises to prepare for incidents such as fire on passenger cruise ships where both the fire needs to be extinguished and the people rescued. The latest hydrogen drones are able to withstand strong waves and wind for up to 4 times longer than previously used drones.
Conditions are much worse at sea than on land. We need aircraft that can withstand strong wind for long durations. Making the most of unmanned systems, I think, can help protect people's lives and safety and further national defense.
The Korea Coast Guard's plan for this year is to have at least half of their staff licensed in drone piloting and to expand the use of drones and other unmanned technology.
Science and technology can help us work more effectively. The Coast Guard will now make all efforts to protect the lives of the people using future technology like satellites.
While drones have been incorporated into various search and rescue efforts, hydrogen drones have yet to even be introduced due to budget problems. Particularly because South Korea is a peninsula with water on all 3 sides of the country, active support from the government remains crucial for the use of such equipment to save people's lives. 이은진, Arirang News.
Now that the month-long monsoon season has ended, sweltering conditions will start to grip the nation. Hotter spells are expected for tomorrow with highs of 31 degrees Celsius in Seoul. Places like Gyeongju will be especially hot with maximum temperatures hiking up to 35 degrees. Under such extreme heat, drinking plenty of water and staying indoors will be recommended. The entire nation will see scattered outbreaks of rainfall tomorrow. Expect about 5 to 60 millimeters. Although the amount of rainfall won't be too much, the ground is still very saturated from previous monsoon rain. Please continue to take extra precautions and be careful around low-lying areas. Morning temperatures in Seoul and Gwangju will start off at 25 degrees. Showers will become more widespread by the daytime. Seoul will get up to 31, Gwangju 33, Gyeongju will be hot at 35 degrees. For the remainder of the week, the Seoul metropolitan area will see frequent showers. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for this Wednesday night newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest news. Good night.
Wake up.